Today we're going to be making a media player, which means all those good icons and some play controls. So let's open up a new sketch document and get started. Now before I get started with some artboards, I'm just going to start firing away at basic icons. And this is how I like to make my icons in Sketch. I'm going to start by pressing R on my keyboard and just hold down Shift and drag out a square for myself. Can be any old size. This is too big. So I'm going to come up in here. I say any old size. Of course, I mean that's too big. I'm going to go down to 32 pixels. That looks really small, but we're going to zoom way in so we get a good look at it. And I'm going to take this and hit Command-Shift-R, rotate. And I'm just going to hold down Shift so it snaps to the sides and hit Enter when it's where I like it. Now I can double click on this shape. It automatically selects the first point in the shape, which was over here, and I'm just going to hit delete on my keyboard. And we're half the way to a play button. Now I know Sketch can draw triangles too, but I don't quite like how the bounding box works on Sketch's triangle yet, so I like to do it myself. I'm going to take this and I'm going to hold down Shift and get a more even triangle. Something just about like that. And that's my play. Now, just as quickly, I'm going to use the play for reference. I'm going to hit R, and I'm going to draw out two boxes. One like this, and I'll switch the colors so you can see it. One like that, and another like that. And let's do 10 apart so they're even. And now we have pause. Well, how are we going to do skip back, skip forward? That's a combination of both of these. So, this is how we do skip forward. And now it could be that we want this icon to take up about as much space as the other two. So I'll shrink down my play and I'll bring this in. And then sometimes it's good to just even this out a little bit. I'll drag it to the top and then I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in. And then I'll hit escape a couple times and get out of that. So now I have a skip forward. And you guessed it, I'll shift select and then I'll drag them out holding option. I'm dragging and holding option when I grab all these. I love to grab in a group and then duplicate by just holding option. And now I want to flip these. But instead of manually flipping it, let's let the computer do the work. So we'll hit Command-G in Group. And then up here in Sketch, I have a little flip. And it's flipped. And then I can hit Shift-Command-G. And that'll ungroup and then get my layers separated back out. So these are all the basic controls I want. Maybe let's get into one more just so we have a full shebang-a-bang here. And we're going to do Restart. So this is going to be the trickiest one. Restart is going to be a circle. Okay. And then I'm going to take the circle, I'm going to turn off the fill and make it a border. I'll make it nice and thick. And we'll do center aligned. Why don't we try 8? Looks about to match. Then I'm going to grab one of my triangles, the one pointing in the right direction. Or pointed to the left, the correct direction to the left. And I'm going to hold down option. I'll drag that over. And that's good. It's just a little big. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Option and shrink this down to about that size. And now, if you remember the scissors, if you don't have these on your toolbar, you can find them in the menu or you can right-click this toolbar, customize it, and whoop. There we go. I found scissors. Where's scissors? Scissors, scissors, scissors. There it is. You can just drag that right up into your toolbar. But I've already got it. So I'm going to take my scissors with this circle selected and just snip out this corner. And just like that, we got a pretty good restart. But why don't we make these a little more friendly with some rounding? So I'm going to double click this shape. Select its 3 corners. I'm going to give it a radius of 2. And that's just going to soften it a little bit. Same thing here with my paws. I'm going to go ahead and select that and hit 2. The rectangles, you don't have to select the points because Sketch knows what's going on with them. So with these next two, I'll just hit 2 as well. And even though they're smaller, the point rounding will stay even across them all, which is nice. And I think I might take these and just tighten them up a little bit. And look at this. Even. And I'm coming up and I'm lining to center, or middle rather. That looks better. And I might scooch these two closer to each other. And this, to get some rounding here, now I can just round this off. And take this, double click, shift select my points, and I'm going to put 2 on here. And really get that pretty rounded up. Now I'll take this stroke and go to Layer, Convert to Outlines. And I might stunt it just a little bit, so it's a little closer to what we're doing with the rest of these. Then I can shift select these 2 paths and use a boolean operation here. Booleans are just a way of saying there's kind of true or false values for all sorts of different shapes. And I'm going to use combine and just smash those 2 shapes together. It looks like the triangle still needs to even out a little bit, so maybe it needs to come up one. Something like that. And maybe my restart is a little big as a whole. Let's look at it in comparison to the pause. It is. It's a little big. So I'm going to go ahead and use the scale command. Okay? Scale is up here. See like a little circle shrinking and growing. And I'm just going to take it down. Height. 56. Why don't we take it down to 52 even? And it's okay if it's looking a little thin now. We can always take this shape and we can add a little border to thicken it back up. If you need. If you need, maybe you don't. I'm just bringing it a little bit more. Scale it till it looks right. There we go. Take it, I'll drag it out over here. Just so we have an idea. I'll take this thing. So remember we added the extra border to make it a little fatter. Right? Well now, my triangle's a little too round. So I'm going to take 2 of its points. I'm just going to say 1. And this kind of gives me some point back to my triangle. And now since that has a border on it, I'm going to go to Layer, Create Outlines. And you can see that turns it literally into outlines. Well, we get this inner path here and outer path. So let's just get rid of this inner path. This extra little triangle will just clean it all up. So now I can select all these. Borders, we'll just turn them off. And for fills, we'll make them, why don't we go black? And now if you want these icons to space out normally, I like to give them little invisible bounding boxes. So I'm going to take R on my keyboard and drag 56 point boxes around these. You can just make a bunch and select them all. And we're going to hit Command, Option, Control. Remember, this is the 3 fingers to the left of the space bar on your Mac. Command, Option, and Control, and press down, and boop, all the layers go to the bottom. Now, we're going to visually position. We're going to visually position all these. These are even, so we can group these and then use our computer to tell me what the perfect center is. I'm going to bring this a little bit closer. 1, 2, 3 on each of these. Then I'll group these. We're going to visually center those. Group these. Going to visually center these. And then I'll mathematically center that. And now we have all these icons centered. One of the things that I have now that I've set this up, is I've got all my play buttons ready to go, but they're not going to behave exactly like I want. You can see here that if I select both, the triangle is kind of beating out the bounds. So you can do this fix a couple ways. You can use clipping masks, or I like to make them symbols, because they're probably, if they're icons, they're going to end up as symbols anyway. So I'm going to just take all these and turn them into symbols. And I always use a prefix. I'll do button, play. I'll take this, and I'll do button, pause. This guy, button, was that skip? Maybe forward. That's better, huh? This can be button, back. And this button, restart. Okay, now when we double click on one, you can see here that we have a bunch of fine extra space. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim that down like that. I'm going to just make sure that they're all trim. And that's going to change the bounds for them in all their instances. And an instance is just a fancy way of saying a copy of a symbol, but it's a copy that remembers the thing that it initially belonged to. Now all these extra rectangles, you can keep them, you can delete them. I'm going to just turn off their fill. That's the same as them not being there. They're not going to show up in an export or anything like that. Select this play. I'm going to create a new layer style, and I'm going to call it button media, button, color. Or I call it black just for now. And then I'll use my command key and see what's happening here. Look at the layer list. As I click and drag, it's grabbing everything in there. So actually, why don't I just command and shift click all of these. Click, click, click. And I'll make sure they're assigned to the same appearance. And that'll just set us up for switching them around later. Now I'll go back to my page. Here they are. They all look like squares. It's hard to see, but they do. And a good way to check is we'll do tidy. And we'll give them all, what do we say, 32 apart. So nice even spacing. They're respecting the invisible bounds, not the actual symbol, which is what we want. We want them spaced evenly. Well, now that we have our media controls, it's just a matter of giving it some wrapper. So I'm going to hit R on my keyboard. Why don't we just drag out a nice rectangle? This can be anything you want. I'll make it 800 wide. Why don't we do 120 tall? And then I'll Option, Command, and Control. Control, Option, and Command, however you want to say it. And press down. That sends it to back. And now I can take all these good things and look at that. I can center align them. I can group these. I'll line them left, and then just, since this is, 120 high, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 48. Maybe this is a audio player. And what I can do with that is I'll make it even longer. Now we're getting really wide. 1200. 120 by 1200. Why don't we round it up nice? Why don't we do 24 points of rounding? And then I'll select this and I'll hit Command D. Duplicate. I'll make it 12 pixels tall. I'll select them both. I'll center it. I know it's hard to see, so I'll change the color here for you. And then I'm going to go ahead and try making this 600. To see what that does for me. So that's about half the entirety of this width. And that's looking about right. And now I just need a little playhead to show someone where they're at. I like to work in 3s and 12s. That makes the most sense for me. Maybe we'll go to 32. Yeah. That looks right. So that, in and of itself, could do it. But let's add a little style. So with a playhead, we're going to add a shadow. We're going to add 2. The second shadow, we're going to give it a bit more blur, 8 points of blur. We're going to offset it Y3. We're going to take the opacity way down, so we're going to go to 20% on it. Okay? And now on the top shadow, we're going to take its blur and go down basically to 1. Almost no blur at all. And we're going to offset it by 1. And we're going to take that down to 20%. So now we have 2 layers of shadow on there. And that gives us a nice raised play bar. Maybe we'll do the same thing here. Why don't we give ourselves a white media player? I'll select my playhead here. I'll make a new style. I'll call it white shadow. Then I can select the whole player, and I can change that to white shadow too. And now I have a white shadow media player, and maybe this media player now needs a gray track. Maybe instead of the white shadow, we'll make it the same right there as our buttons. And just like that, we did a little invert. Let's do one. I'll show you how easy it is to do dark. I'll come up here. I'll make these the media button color. I'll take each of my icons. You can barely see them. You can't see them at all. But I'm Command-Shift clicking, right? I can select each of them and change those to white shadow. White shadow. White shadow, white shadow. If you have 2 pieces like that, you can come in here and you can select them both and just use that same combine boolean operation we were talking about before. Look at that, 2. 1, 2, and that actually cleans up that extra edge. So now these are all one piece when I'm coloring them. White shadow. White shadow. White shadow. White shadow. Are you guys getting sick of hearing me say that? White shadow. And why don't we say that the media player on black is going to be really dark. So we get a nice dark playhead. So I'll just group all these so they're all together and clean in my layers list. Select them, I'll tidy them up. And just like that, we have a media player in a few different styles. Looks like I lost my shadow here. There we go. A media player in a few different styles that you can use inside of one of your projects. Maybe you need to do an audio player for something. You know, I'm not saying you have to copy the style, but I'm saying you have that option. Let's go in and add a couple more details. So, very often we have different play times, right? Why don't we add some color here? We'll have some fun. So I'm selecting the play track and I'm hitting Command D and duplicating. And I'm zooming in until I get the sort of middle grabber here. You can see when you zoom out, you don't always get the middle grabber. I want that third middle one. I'll shrink it down. And I'm just putting it behind the playhead. And now we can have fun with all sorts of colors here. Maybe we have a... Whoo! Jeez. Doesn't that just vibrate at you? A nice neon blue. How about this guy? Duplicate him. Find that third. Grab me, what would be cool here? How about a red? Nice. Crimson red. And for this, why don't we go full yellow jacket? I like a nice warm yellow. Nice golden. And so you can do a lot, and of course you can take those colors and apply them to different things. You can even change the button color all really easily. We saw me swap the color, but have fun with it, use colors that you like. All right, now I'm going to show you this last thing, and I really think you're going to like it. This is how easy this is to adapt to different situations. So I'm going to go ahead and take this dark media player right here, and I'm going to hit R on my keyboard, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. The size doesn't matter because we're going to manually adjust the size. And that size is going to be 1280 by 720. Okay? And that's an HD video size. Now I can take this media player. Ooh, I can hit Control, Option, Command. Make sure it's at the top of my layers. And now we already have a video player control. But if we want to take it a step further, maybe we want to go a little bit more YouTube on it, we'll do this. I'll take my rounded corners and I'll get rid of them. I'll take this bar and I'll stretch it out to the sides. Ungroup this to make sure it snaps. Nice. Now I'll take all these controls and we'll say, hey, these are too big for a YouTube type size. YouTube wouldn't go more than 32 pixels down here. Really small. And we'd get them further apart. Maybe 32 apart. I'll take my play track. I'll shrink it down to 4 pixels. My playhead, I'll shrink that down to 12. We're getting really subtle. Really subtle. Now I'm going to fill that with, let's say, a fake little YouTube red. What do we call it? Somewhere in here. And I'll save that color just so I can put it over here. Use that same color. And now instead of doing dark gray here, I'm going to change it to white. Instead of full white, I'm going to change it down to 50% white. So it's going to be semi-see-through. Semi-see-through. Now I'm going to take these 3 layers, my playhead, my play bar, and my progress bar, and I'm going to group them. Okay? Now I'm going to take them and line them up with my play button. I'm going to select my little circle. And over here in Resizing, I'm going to say, fix your size. Keep it the same. Don't change. I love you the way you are. Don't change. And then this, instead of 600, why don't we do 1280, and we're going to go minus 64. So that's 1280 with 32 pixels on either side. And we can select all 3 of these and center them just so we see it. And these play controls, we can tuck those over in here. So now we have just a little padding, just a little. We'll bring it down. Maybe we'll take this back to 120 in height. So you can already see this looking YouTube-y. I know we'd have our quality and little YouTube logo controls over here. And we're going to do the last couple details. For fill, instead of black, we're going to change it to a gradient. We're going to make sure both sides of the gradient are all the way black. But the top, this guy right here, we'll take it down to 0. And then the bottom, we don't have to be at 100. Why don't we do 85? I'm just using my arrow keys. Punch that in. Pretty close, right? We're pretty close. And now the last thing we're going to do is let's select our rectangle. And this is why I love Sketch and all the sort of plugins that there are. We'll use this sort of data drop down. Unsplash. Why don't we search for something good? No, not people. Let's say We're going to search for flower. It's going to download, and we have a wonderful picture dropped in. This looks like it's in Japan or something. It's beautiful. And you can see our media player. Look at that image shining through the white. But it's getting nice and dark. And if you want, you can adjust where it gets to its darkest point. You can make sure that your play buttons are going to be seen. And that works with any image. Select this all and duplicate it. Even though we have a lot of trees up there, let's shout out to my buddy Bob Ross, and we'll do happy tree. I don't know if this is going to work. Well, she certainly looks happy. Maybe we should just try tree, huh? Or trees. There's a tree in our world. There we go. That looks a little bit more Rossian, doesn't it? So now we have an audio and a video player. And you can go as big and chunky as we see on the left, or small and petite like you see on the right, but we're using the same components. And you can say, hey, I don't want to do rounding. Hey, I don't want to do colors. I want to go all monochrome with it. Have fun with it. But that is how you make a quick media player inside of Sketch. Have a good day and keep designing.